out of high school by 17 in the Marine Corps. I thought about college, and that wasn't going to be for me, so I went in the Marine Corps. Again, competed strong, did that. That was a great experience. In that, got out, started working. Had to get a job back in time since like 1987. Started swinging a pickaxe, digging trench to lay cable for $5 an hour.
Oof.
Just all day swinging. I mean, I was like,
Yeah.
it was worse than being on a chain gang for prison. And I'm like, wow, this isn't much of a future. I'm thinking I got to find something to do. And the guy offered me a side job. He said, hey, could you help me out at my house? I've got some granite, gravel, and stuff in the front. I had to move to the back on the street. I got to move to the back. It was 35 tons of this crushed granite. I said, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I bought a wheelbarrow and a shovel with like my last $85 before payday. And I went and I moved this stuff. It was in Tucson, Arizona. It was about 100 degrees out in the summer.
Ooh.
And I moved it all in about 10 hours, spread it in his backyard, did the whole thing. Because I like the challenge, right? I just want to, I can work, I can do this. So I'm not going to let a pile of rock beat me. So I beat the rock. But here's the best part, John. I always tell people, he came out and he put $1,000 in my hand for the work. And I looked at that 1,000 and I said, I did this yesterday for $50.
Yeah.
And that was the moment I knew my future.
Yeah.
I'm going to work for myself.
Yeah. Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are on the Brink podcasting. Today, very, very interesting podcast. We have a very, very interesting guest. We are podcasting from Prince George, BC, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people from around the world that say, okay, we know where Canada is, and we know where British Columbia is, where is Prince George? Well, a big city in British Columbia is Vancouver. We are about 500 miles north of Vancouver. Or, for our friends in Europe, 800 kilometers. That puts us physically in the center of British Columbia, north, south, east, west. Now, Prince George in the region, about 80 to 90,000 people, 120,000 in the region. It is nature's paradise. We, within 50 miles, have 100 lakes, lots of trees, lots of nature, lots of wild animals and interesting animals. We have black bears, grizzly bears, caribou, deer, wolf, you name it, we have them. And so living with nature. Today, a very, very special guest. His name is Richard Walsh. And Richard, a very, very interesting guest. He's an entrepreneur, an ex-Marine, actually, and has a very, very, he used to be a boxer, champion boxer, a black belt, and an author, an amazing story, entrepreneur. Richard, tell us all about yourself, and starting from the beginning, where were you born, and then obviously you spent time in the military and all those other things. You went through all the ups and downs, so have I. So I know what that kind of feels like, and the downs were sometimes very deep. And obviously now you're successful as an entrepreneur, helping others. Tell us your story.
Yeah, awesome, John. Thanks for having me on. First of all, I really appreciate being here. And yeah, it's been quite a ride. Like you, it's been really great. It's been hard and it's been challenging, but when you look back, it's like, look, I'm still alive. It's
Makes
a good thing.
Stronger, right?
That's right. It makes me way stronger. So
I say, how strong do I have to be? Is the question a lot of times. Yeah.
Just enough to keep breathing. That's all.
Exactly.
If you can breathe, you're in the fight. That's how I look at it. If you breathe, you're in the fight. So you got a chance. So I came up, just moved around a lot as a kid, kind of adapted a lot, kind of on the fly, moved around a lot, like 30 times before I got out of high school. So that was, it wasn't traumatic. It was just an interesting way you had to learn to adapt.
How come you moved around so much? Was your dad in the military or something and moved around, or what was the reason?
My mother, I don't know the real reason. She liked to move. So sometimes we'd just move like down the street. Sometimes we'd move just enough to get out of this school. It was an odd thing. So I never really got the full answer. I just know I had to adapt. And, so that I went with that. And that was great, John, because I actually learned I didn't have a ton of friends. So what I learned was like, you find the one person who you really click with, and then you kind of go deep with that person, you hang out, you do all this stuff. And then I move and I kind of don't see that person again. Then you kind of move on the same way. So
Right.
I was never worried about being accepted by everyone. I
Right.
wasn't a clique guy or anything like that. So it really
Right.
was, you don't know it at the time, but man, it really served me well.
Right.
It really served me well going forward. And another thing I learned, I started running cross country. That was my first sport.
Right.
And I'm a big kid. I mean, even at 13, I was 6 foot, 180 pounds, and I'm running long distance.
Right.
So people were like, that's odd. And
Yeah.
I was really good at it.
Yeah.
So I could run really well. I competed really well, did all that stuff. That was great. And then out of high school by 17 in the Marine Corps. I thought about college and that wasn't going to be for me. So I went in the Marine Corps. Again, competed strong, did that. That was a great experience. In that, got out, started working. Had to get a job back in time. So this is like 1987. Started swinging a pickaxe, digging trench to lay cable for $5 an hour.
Oof.
Just all day swinging. I mean, I was like,
Yeah.
it's worse than being on a chain gang for prison. And I'm like, wow, this isn't much of a future. I'm thinking I got to find something to do. And a guy offered me a side job. He said, hey, could you help me out at my house? I've got some granite, gravel, and stuff in the front. I had to move to the back on the street. I got to move to the back. It was 35 tons of this crushed granite. I said, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I bought a wheelbarrow and a shovel with like my last $85 before payday. And I went and I moved this stuff. It was in Tucson, Arizona. It was about 100 degrees out in the summer.
Ooh.
And I moved it all in about 10 hours, spread it in his backyard, did the whole thing. Because I like the challenge, right? I just want to walk and work. I can do this. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to let a pile of rock beat me. So I beat the rock. But here's the best part, John. I always tell people, he came out and he put $1,000 in my hand for the work. And I looked at that 1,000 and I said, I did this yesterday for $50.
Yeah.
And that was the moment I knew my future.
Yeah.
I'm going to work for myself.
Yeah.
I'm not working for anybody ever again. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to name my price. I'm going to work hard. I'm totally okay with that.
That
That's
was
how
the
it all
trigger, right?
That was it. I realized
Yeah.
you can control whatever you want to make.
Exactly.
So I always knew I had that ability, but
Yeah.
that experience, that physical, and then the pay, I'm like, this is it. So I started to build businesses. Landscape business turned into a custom water feature business. So I made waterfalls and ponds and things like that. Started to incorporate steel sculpture with that. I became, the best in the nation at what I did here in America. Award winning. I'm published. I'm doing these incredible steel sculptures. I'm doing world-class exhibits now and huge commissions and just having a great time on top of the world, making a ton of money and just enjoying kind of the spotlight and being who I am. And then 08, 09 came. We had the big little financial crunch. And not that I didn't know this, but people didn't really have to have a waterfall in their backyard.
That was the last thing they needed.
That's right. They're all holding on to their money pretty tight. I remember November 5th of 08, I lost $500,000 in a day. People just canceled. They're not going to do this. And it just kept going off the cliff from there, John. And that was like, wow, we're not going to recover. I think it's over. Yeah. And we limped through the next few months into 09. And it just wasn't going to happen. But I think the best part of the story, John, at that point was I woke up one morning, I kind of had an epiphany. I have 6 small kids at the time, 4 years old and younger.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, I got these 6 little kids, my wife.
So you lost your house. You
lost my home.
Family, 6 young kids, 4 years and younger, and no job, and no career or nothing. Everything is gone.
Everything is gone. Poof, gone. And so I'm laying there. I woke up and I thought, because I really didn't want to lose everything. I just knew it was gone. And this inside of me is, I'm not a big loser. I like to win. And I've done so much. I'm a Marine. I'm going to win. I'm going to achieve the objective, right? So, but then I realized, I said, I've got these 6 little kids who just attack me when I come home. My one son would chase me down the driveway as I'm leaving, crying because I'm leaving. And I just keep going. And I said, if I stay on this course of business first, it's everything that I do. It's who I am and drive. I said, I think I'm going to destroy my children's future because they're going to have broken marriages, failed relationships. They might be good at business, but the rest of their life's going to be a mess because of what I showed them what to do. Not what I taught them, what they caught, right? More is caught than taught with kids. So that example I lived, I'm like, I can't do that. So I walked in that day and I shut down. And we were going anyways. I said, we're done today.
Yeah.
I finished. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to relocate and start over. And that was the beginning of rebuilding, trying to figure out and take it from there and get going again, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I couldn't do what I had done.
So where did you go? You were living where at the time that you said, okay, that's it. And then you said, with your wife, the 6 little children, you packed up everything that you wanted to take, the little that you had left, and you went where?
We went from Chicago to Wisconsin.
Okay.
So really it was only about an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
But we relocated into another state and just had to start over.
Major move.
And it was, right. It's a big thing because we had been there for
psychological.
Yeah.
Physically, psychological, everything.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. You start packing up your stuff and you start seeing things and you're selling things and you're just trying to make enough to go. And it was an interesting time. We went from basically city living to the country. Okay. So my wife was born and raised in the city of Chicago. I was kind of in the suburbs. So it was an adjustment. So now you have one neighbor a half mile one way, another neighbor the other way, and there's no one around and not a lot of friends. So it was a real culture shock for her. So it took a little while for her to adjust. As you've heard, I'm used to moving.
Yeah.
It didn't bother. It's just another place for me. So I just started over. She was not that way. So that was a little rough. But we managed to get through it. I decided, I train people. I'm a fitness guy. I love to work out. I'm a boxer, all this stuff. So I said, I'm gonna go back to training people. I'll just go work at a gym right now until I totally figure out what I'm going to do. So I got a job as a fitness trainer. They didn't have it. It had what's called Anytime Fitness. Don't know if they have them up there, but open 24 hours. But I was the only trainer. So I built like all my clients. And then next thing you know, John, I'm trainer of the year for this place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like,
are you
okay.
Surprised?
Well, I wasn't. I mean, I trained a year. That's a pretty big deal, but that was cool.
Yeah.
But, as an entrepreneur, what's your next step then?
Yeah.
And they tell you the trainer of the year there, it's time to go open my own gym.
Exactly.
So that's what I did. I went and did boot camp style training, created the gym, started to grow that. That was awesome. That was a lot of fun. Started the construction business as well. Started doing roofing, siding, windows, started doing that. So now I had 2 things going. I moved into the next one. And then people started asking me, other entrepreneurs, well, how'd you go from all that, from nothing, being on the top, being at the bottom, climbing back up now? And now you actually have a better life because I designed the new businesses, John, so that it wasn't all business. It was just an income generator. I liked it, but I also had time for my family.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to homeschool our kids and I wanted to be around. And if my wife needed me, I could get there in 15 minutes, not 5 hours, when I'm done with a work day. So I completely revamped how I built businesses and really understood what you had to do not to be trapped by the business.
So you lived to work and so not work to live, right? Oh, sorry, the other way around. So your life was not all about work, but working was to give you the lifestyle that you wanted and that you wanted to have. And that really became the direction that you want towards, stabilized the family to have an income, and then from there and then find that delicate balance that entrepreneurship is so, even in my life, that it becomes so dominating that at some points, especially when you're building things, it becomes 24/7 as long as you stay awake. Very hard on families and questionable, is it all worth it? And so you don't want to have to look at it looking back, but planning forward. That has to be balance.
Right, exactly. They say that, finances is the number one cause of divorce. And I have a caveat, unless you own a business.
Right.
And it's the business that's the number one cause of divorce. And the funny thing about it, John, is you're doing all that business for your family.
Right.
For freedom, for money, for time that you never get.
Right.
Most people are trapped in the owner prison. That's why I wrote the book, Escape the Owner Prison, because I saw the patterns of all these business owners. They're making money but they're chained to it. They can't leave for any amount of time. They can go on a week or 2 week vacation, but they got to call in every day to make sure the place hasn't burned down.
Yeah.
You know, they just don't have any real freedom, and that's why they got into business. So I really started seeing that with all these people I began to work with, and that's what inspired the book. And I'm like, well, I can help these people because I really love entrepreneurs gaining success. I love people owning their business because I believe it is the economic engine, the freedom, profitability, impact, make impact with your business. You can do a lot of great things like that, but if the business is a hot mess. So if you can run the business properly, if you can fix that, you're limitless in what you can achieve. It's really awesome.
Exactly. So becoming an author is not easy. Writing books is not easy, and I've done about 4 of them, and actually I'm working on my 5th and 6th one. The first one that I wrote is this one, Against All Odds. It took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And it's not about hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is, just the opposite, how much it was through all the ups and downs. And then after that, I started writing more books. So what brought you to writing the book other than sharing the message that is so important in finding that balance? If you got a copy of the book there, we can show to our guests watching us. Escape the Owner's
Prison.
Prison. So very interesting title. Is it available on all major medias or?
Yeah, you can go Amazon. You can get it. You can certainly get it on Amazon. They'll ship it right to you. So yeah. So the subtitles: The Contractor's New Way to Scale, Regain Control, and Fast Track Growth While Loving Life. Right. So what I did with it, I wove my story in it, but then I talk about a lot of fundamentals and basics that I see a lot of businesses miss to be successful and create that freedom. So I kind of give them a whole roadmap throughout the book. And the reason I wrote it was, to help people, but I've always been a bit of a writer. I wrote stories, I wrote screenplays, just as a kid, even as a kid.
Right.
That was my escape.
Right.
Like I said, not a lot of friends. I just write. I just create. That was my creative outlet at the time. Never thought I was artistic. Never thought of myself as an artist. Right. But I was doing all that. And then that moved into the steel sculpture. I just taught myself. And the water features first, and that became art in itself, all the boulder work and everything else. So writing for me, I'm like, I always I want to do something. I want to write. So this was in me. I wrote it. It did not take me a long time to write it. But my second book now is taking a little bit longer, John.
So what is the second one about?
It's called Sharpen the Spear, and it's actually this journey between an entrepreneur and a business coach. He's a former special operations Marine, and he's an unbelievable business coach. Right. So it's this combination of what he knows, what the entrepreneur knows, and faith. There's a combination of faith and all kinds of stuff, and how they come together and actually kind of help and save each other. It's a pretty awesome story as they go through it. So you actually learn how to scale a business, but you also learn the relationship aspects of that too.
Now, with my books, what I do is I'm a storyteller. That's what I do. And so I wrote that book. And then the other part for me is that I was born in Holland in 1940, November the 1st. So I'm going to be 84 November the 1st. And it was just before the war years. Saw far too much that we should not have seen. And then academically, I was not a success story either. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And they said, what are we going to do with this guy? And people said to my parents, well, maybe send him to the mentally challenged school. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So let's teach them a trade. Now, my dad worked in lumber and my grandfather was a master carpenter. So they said, let's send them to the furniture factory, and then he becomes a furniture maker. So I did that, and then at 13, and then in the evenings I went to the school to become a furniture maker. And then the other part that kind of connects is that we were liberated by the Canadian Army, April the 12th, 1945, and it made such an impression on me that I always knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I wanted to go when I was 17, but then was drafted into the Dutch Air Force. And I wanted to be a pilot. Well, that didn't work. And so they put me, for God knows what reason, in special forces. So, and that was interesting. Now, I was a brown belt judo. That's the only reason I can see, because I don't know why else they put me there. But anyway, so I was there for 2 years, so good experience. And then from there, and then I worked in Holland. And then finally, when I was 23, I then decided to go to Canada, but I wanted to start with nothing, from the ground up, because all the kids that went to school with me in grade 7, they went to college and university, and I became a laborer, and they was kind of looked down on, and but I was always kind of living in a world of my own, and so I was a happy-go-lucky individual, but was always inside of me. Why were they different than I was? And so I thought I had to start over new from the beginning. So I left Holland with 1 suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I knew where I was going to go to British Columbia, Canada, because that's where all the trees are, because I wanted to build a lumber mill. That was my dream. Right. And then couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. And I arrived in Montreal, took the train across Canada, and then arrived in Montreal, in Vancouver, went through the immigration department. Fortunately, there was a German fellow there, and I told him, I could speak some German, and I told him what I wanted to do. He said, go to Prince George. It's a boom town. That's where they're building all lumber mills. That's now 60 years ago. I can still see the Greyhound station here in the distance, and so I came off the bus here, and I had my suitcase, couldn't speak the language, suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and couldn't speak the language, didn't have a job, didn't know a soul. But I counted my money at least 3 times, and I had exactly $25.47. But I had lots of attitude. No matter how tough things are, I always believe, I avoid negative, and I always believe tomorrow will be a better day. And then passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. And work ethic, I work harder than anybody. And even still now at nearly 84, I get up in the morning at 5:30. I always make my bed, Army, and Air Force in my case, and I always think I'm late. And so that's what I do, and that's what I still do today. And, and then it took me probably being here, even then, after I was already successful, started as a cleaner man, lumber pilot, and then in about 10 years, I had my own company, the initial company, and then from there on in, built other companies around it, and it's not about that, but it was fairly successful. But it took me 32 years. Everybody said, oh, you're so successful. I didn't feel that way until I picked up a book here in the store. I still don't know why I picked it up. And the book's title was Driven to Distraction. This is the actual book. And inside the book, it's written by Dr. Edward Halliwell, and it was about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And so I wrote in the book, and when I picked it up in January 1997, now I finally know, in Dutch actually, because I was ashamed of it. Now I finally know who I am. And so this is the book. Dr. Halliwell wrote that book, and Dr. Halliwell is ADHD, a doctorate, wrote 18 books, dyslexic, so am I, and ADHD, and very, very successful globally on the topic of ADHD and issues around that. And, you are podcast number 304, podcast 203 on the Brink, for those people watching, was an interview, a podcast I did with Dr. Halliwell. Amazing how the world is. It changed my life. in
Awesome.
1997. And so so our discussion, he's the expert, not me. The more I found out about ADHD, looking at Google and all the other thing, I came to the conclusion it's a superpower.
Hmm.
And so when we had our discussion with Dr. Helliwell, I believe that at least not 8% of the population, but probably closer to 20% of the population, ADHD, male as well as female different than male, the way they project it. And he said, no, John, at least 25%. I agree with them. And then the other part that I said to him, my experience has been in businesses and boards of directors and all the other things I've been involved in, watching CEOs, that I believe, I suggested to Dr. Helliwell, that probably 50% of the successful, and the operative is successful, entrepreneurs, ADHD. He said, no, John, at least 75%. And I agree with him. And so, and then I felt I had to write a book about it. So I wrote this one about it, ADHD Unlocked. The book is interesting because you can open it anywhere, go either this way or that way. It's always interesting no matter where you go or what you feel like. So that's a little bit
Yeah.
of my background. And then you said to me, how do you do all the stuff that you're doing? You have 10 companies, you're podcasting, you're a speaker, you write books and all the other kinds of, how do you do it? I say ADHD, that's how I do it.
Mhm. I had a client very similar, exactly, and I diagnosed this myself before I knew a little bit about it. Multi-billionaire, I mean, unbelievably self-made, super successful. And I learned early on he loved what I did. All this work for months, probably building water features and buying my sculptures and doing all kinds of stuff. And he just he'd call you out of the blue and he just talk to you, come grab you and have you go show him stuff. But usually you had about 3 minutes to close a deal with him. So if he wanted to be talking, he was just the greatest guy I ever met. So you always come in. I'll give you an example. So he was so unique. He had like 100 cars. He bought a new car every week and had this whole ritual he'd do. But I come like, oh, he wants a scope. Well, how about 13,000 for the scope? He's like, can you do it for 10? Can you do it for 10,000? I'm like, okay, for you, Gary, I'll do it. And I give it to him. I realized over a little bit of time, he had this thing about $10,000. He wouldn't spend more than that at a time, right? But he'd spend $10,000 every day.
Yeah.
Right. So I started to learn how to negotiate with him. Okay, so whatever it is, I'm going to start up above 10,000.
Yeah. Work your way down.
but he was so fascinating. One day, John, he's unloading a bunch of golf shoes in plastic bags, like brand new, taking them out of his Mercedes, putting them in his SUV, and I'm helping him. Like, what are all these for? And he goes, oh, I designed them and I'm giving them to clients. So he designed his own golf shoes and had them made. Okay. Calls Toyota. He wants a certain kind of engine. Has Toyota build him a special engine. Okay. Everything he does is like that. I'm in the car with once he's talking to some country singer he's investing in, right? I invest in this guy and I'm doing this and this, and I've got this going and this going, and he owns professional sports teams, this red. And I'm like, I'm just in the car going, this is unbelievable, and you come and like want to hang out with me? He'll just come by and pick me up with his wife, take us to show us some of your work. Okay. So we drive around, good seeing you, and off we go, right? So I get it. Like when you see that when you've mastered it like you did, it's amazing. Like you said, it truly is that superpower.
Yeah.
I've seen people use that and I'm like, how do I get that? How do I get that? So, because I'm not like that, but I have a way of going, but it's impressive.
So for me, it was 1997. I was already then 57 years old, right? So that when I saw the book and that I said, now I know who I am. And then it took me another 5 years before I went to my doc. That was a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters. And he said, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. So, and we looked at, yeah, I do, so big time. So so by then I was 62 years old and already had done a whole lot of stuff. So it took me from the time I was 13, but everybody said, yeah, you're too dumb, you're stupid, you can't do the school, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff, right? And so it took me 50 years before I realized ADHD. That was the key, one of the key areas in my life. And and that's why I felt so strongly about writing the book about it. For now, gradually stigma is disappearing from ADHD, and especially as it applies to younger people. I virtually have it on a daily basis that I run into people. Even just today, actually, I had somebody on a podcast, amazing individual. It took 2/3 probably of the podcast, immensely successful individual. He said, I'm ADHD. I haven't told anybody really, but I am, and it happens daily, virtually, that happens to me. So the other part was that, but where I feel so strongly about it is I gave a lot of these books away to people here in the region, and at one point I had to do a presentation west of Prince George, a keynote presentation, and the night before I was having dinner in the hotel, and somebody came up to me and he said, you send me a copy of the book, when he was a counselor at the city here of where I was speaking, and he said, can I talk to you after you've done your dinner? I said, sure, I'll come over to you. So he told me that I had sent him this book, and that he has a son that was 14, 15 years old, really struggling with ADHD. And so they got the book, they read it together, and it changed his life. And I said, oh my God, that's what it is all about. And that's why I feel so strongly about it, to speak about it, and to speak about it as it relates to me, and give presentations about it. And then a lot of times when I give presentations about entrepreneurship, all the other things that we talk about, I always leave some room for talking about ADHD and how it affected me. And I usually ask, how many in the audience, if a couple hundred or whatever, there are a variety of people stick up their hands and say, I am, but I never talk to anybody about it. But I know by the time I'm presenting, and I'm a good presenter, I know that a lot of people are sitting there and say, darn, I wish I had it too.
Yeah. It's amazing, when I was the same thing in school, so barely graduated high school. The difference was I hung out with the smartest kids in school. So everyone thought I was smart. Funny story. So in my senior year of high school, I'm at like my third high school. A friend of mine, he's, the smart kids, and they like to check their GPA every day. Right? They're like in that competition, right? We got to go see. So he goes, come on with me. We'll go check our GPAs. I'm like, okay, I'll tag along. He gets his, and he's like 4.2 or whatever. And he goes, well, get Richard's. And the girl hands him mine. He goes, no, this isn't his. He goes, this isn't his. She goes, it's his. And I go, his name was Victor. I go, Victor, it was 1.7, right? I'm like, Victor, that's my grade point average. He goes, it can't be. I go, you ever seen me bring a book home? He goes, I don't do school. And he's like, that's unbelievable, because I'm with all the smart kids, right? So I can do things. Obviously, I'm successful, right? But all the time in school, and they tell you you're not smart, that's an umbrella clause for you're hopeless.
Exactly.
And it's usually the opposite.
Exactly.
It's just you're in the wrong environment. That's the problem. So
where I get a charge that a lot of times people are asking me, and they're saying that you failed grade 7 3 times. Does it still bother you? I said, yeah, it really does. Now even, the 80 years later, or how many years later, yeah, it still bothers me. Really, yeah, it still bothers me. I think I should have left earlier. Because it didn't do nothing for me. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the point. So tell us about, so now you started a new direction, and with your books, and then with entrepreneurs, and you're engaging them. How do you do that? Online or both, or how do you work with your clientele?
Yeah, it's primarily remote. So we're doing, Zoom calls, regular phone calls. I have modules. We work through stuff. I take them through. I do tactical and strategic. So tactical is problems that fire up every day. I call them little fires, and you have to put those out to keep the business going. And strategical is, how do you keep those from happening again? How do you create systems and processes to head that off? So, yeah, you put the fire out, but then it flares up again 3 weeks later. You haven't fixed anything. You
Yeah.
just it's all Band-Aids, right? It's all Band-Aids. It's not. So we really go to the root cause of things and we get these things dialed in. And it's a lot of fun, actually, John, because you get in, like I said, the great thing about entrepreneurs, almost 100%, without exception, they're really hard workers.
Right.
It's like you said, when you have work ethic, okay, first, you're never going to be hungry.
No.
If you have work ethic, right? So I tell my sons that when they work, I'm like, you're kind of a goof right now. You're a 17-year-old kind of knucklehead, but you're never going to be hungry because that boy can work. I even, with my son, so he was a real good athlete. He's in the Marine Corps now. He's 19. He was a really good runner, half-mile runner, 800-meter. And he wanted to go to the Junior Olympics, so we're training him. But we were on this team who the coach is just about talent. 80 kids on a team, and he cares about 3 because they have talent. And that would drive me crazy because I know these kids want to work, and I want to make them good no matter what. Yeah, they're not going to be Olympic athletes or whatever.
No.
So we kind of left the team. I made these shirts, and right across the front it says, "We outwork your talent every day."
Exactly.
That was our slogan. Like, and then when talent doesn't work hard, hard work beats talent. So it's all about work ethic, because I'm like, you're not going to be an athlete forever. You're not going to be a superstar. You got a life to live. And if you can work and understand that hard work is going to get you there, that's certain. And to see my son now in the Marine Corps, just the challenges and the success he's had and the goals and the determination to achieve stuff, work ethic, just like you say in there.
Yeah.
It's if that's all you had, is a good work ethic, you're going to be okay.
So what I say, attitude, passion, work ethic, what follows is success, for sure. And those things in particular. But I see these days a lot of times, that I heard on one of the U.S. radio stations, I heard, that 75%, and probably is the same in Canada, 75% of the people that work don't like their jobs.
Right.
And then 70% of that 75% are looking for another job. And so, can you imagine? And then at the same time, when I do presentations to young people, high schools, colleges, universities, I always say to them respectfully, so after you're done, what are you planning to do? And most of them say, I don't know. I said, well, I believe it would be helpful to you, again, respectfully, is that, you want to be a truck driver, talk to a truck driver, see what it involves. How about this? How about that? Then do that. You want to be a contractor, talk to contractors. They love to talk to you, building contractors or whatever contractors of some different sort, talk to them. Find out what it involves. It gives you direction. You want to be a doc, talk to doctors and see how that works. Or lawyers, or for that matter, entrepreneurs or CEOs, So I felt I had to write a book about that, so I wrote this one, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And so that if I look at me, I've been working for 70 years since I was 13. I'm nearly 84, so about 70 years, 71 years in a couple of months from now, and saying, okay, John, are you living the dream? I say every day, even now still, and that's how important it is to find things that you like to do and then apply always attitude, passion, work ethic, and the door is wide open for success. And then it becomes a question of entrepreneurship, and being on your own is not easy, especially if you have to drag it out from the ground, non-existing. Then it takes a lot of effort, and then obviously, and that's the part that you're specialized in, correctly so, then you have to try to find that balance, because you have to have this hard work in particular, and when you're starting companies, you have to have your family or the people that are around you supportive of what you're doing, and then trying to find that balance that does not become that you live for work only. You work to live, but not the other way around.
I think it's interesting with your title there on the book. It becomes like here, people will say, living the dream. Like, I get what you're saying, but you know how they do it in like sarcasm? Like, hey, how's it going? Oh, living the dream.
Yeah.
Meaning that they're in misery, right? They say that. I'm like, I had a guy do that to me literally at the car wash. Okay. I pull up and I say, hey, how you doing? He goes, living the dream. I'm like, let me give you a little advice. Don't ever say that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you're not for one. Okay. And if you want to live the dream, get out of here. Yeah. Okay. Like, do something about it. Yeah. Don't, because I live the dream like you, John. I'm living the dream. I'm raising my kids the way I want. I'm building businesses. I said, so don't drag me down into your mess. Okay. Yeah. Don't be saying that to people. Just keep quiet on that and go do something about it. I hope this isn't on the road for you.
Yeah. Or the other one, Richard, is they say to me, "Oh, you're so lucky." And it's, no. Yeah. The way it works is the harder you work, the luckier you get. Isn't that amazing? So that's the way it works.
Yep. Opportunity doesn't find luck; it finds hard workers.
Exactly.
That's who opportunity finds. Okay. Yeah. So it's all out there for you if you want to do the time.
So the kids are doing well. The 6 that were there are now grown up, obviously, and so and you changed direction, and you're now stable in Wisconsin. You don't move anymore, and your wife is happy about that, obviously, and so. And again, as you said, writing books is one of your passions, one of the things you love to do. And so as you then look forward for Richard Walsh, where are you going from here, Richard, going forward, writing more books, obviously, and being more active?
Yeah, we're scaling Sharpen the Spear coaching. So it's really, I want to help 10,000 business owners create freedom, profit, and impact in their business. So that's my goal. So we have a number, we're measuring, and I don't want to take 10 or 20 years to do it.
No.
So we're on a mission to do that because I want to see people who work hard. I want to fix it. I want to get them on the right trajectory so they can have freedom. They can create great profit and then have impact to all those around them, from family to friends, community, and beyond. That's the big goal. That's my vision for the next 7-10 years. That's where we're going to be.
So what I see is that I write books, I do blogging, I do speaking, and then I discovered pod matching or podcast. And so I started that first with blogging about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and then gradually worked with a local television station, did some speaking there for local region, then started interviewing interesting people, and then the 2 years of how do we call it again? For the injections of lost my
the vaccines.
Vaccines. Yeah. So for 2 years we could not be in the radio station or anything like that. So we did podcasting or say, what should we do now? And saying, I had this apartment here, and saying, well, make it a studio, and then we'll start interviewing people. As you can probably see, I got 2 couches here, and then, but then we are running out of very interesting people in the regions, and then said, maybe I have to set up another studio in Vancouver, and then saying, well, if you watch CNN, ABC, and all the other ones, they at least sometimes have 1, 2, 3, 4 different people on the screen from all different areas, and maybe that's what we should do it virtual, and then started watching podcasting more on virtual on a global basis by joining podcasts, which was a good one that matches us up with different individuals, and that really podcasting, in my view, is the future, and working through internet and is the future, and then like what you were saying, is with your objective is up to 10,000 people connecting. How do you do it online and saying we have a number of people? I believe now with our podcasting and yours that as we podcast globally, we probably have up to 10,000 people watching us from around the world. How can they contact you? Have you got a website, or how would that work? Because you do it also online.
Yeah, so they can go to sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. That's my website.
Okay.
There's a contact page. They can book a call with me. It's the simplest thing to do, and they can do that. So we can talk, figure out their business, what's going on, what's their biggest challenge. We start real simple like that, and then we progress from there and get into it. But you're right about podcasting, John. I had a great podcast, 115 episodes, hour long guests. The people you're able to meet today to do in your podcast, back in, I'm going to call it our day, John. I'm not quite as old as you. Never would have happened.
No.
You could never do this. I could never meet you, a guy who's done all the stuff you do. You could never meet me. I've had Navy SEALs, NBA coaches. I've had best-selling authors. I've had all these people. Like, you'd have to be a major network to even think about doing that. And now we can sit here in my office, in your home on the couch, and we can have these unbelievable conversations. And it's that, you're right. It's the future is where it's at. I'd still love to get in the room and be in front of people. And I do that a lot. I love it.
Yeah. If I have keynote presentations, especially where I'm at in Northern British Columbia, it usually takes me 2 days, maybe in the States or somewhere in Canada. It takes 2 days, and then I have presentations, usually a couple hundred people, maybe more or less. And so, but here we have this conversation between you and me of these interesting lives, and having this conversation about similarities that we have. You would never be able to do that. And there we're doing it, you sitting in your office, or and me here, you in Wisconsin, me in Central British Columbia. And at the same time, this is just at the beginning. This is the new media that, not newspapers, not radio stations, not television. This is the new media of where communications will go to on a global basis. We talk, as you have, to people in China, Africa, you name it, wherever. We talk to them as I do to you sitting here. And part of that is technology that has become very important of it. And then the other one, vehicles like pot matching and other things that are evolving as we go, platforms of all different descriptions. It's still very much at the beginning. And for me, as somebody in his mid-80s, it's, I have a hard time catching up with technology, because now you have this, and then you have AI, and that's going to change the world. And so, but I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was on a podcast, and he averages 112,000 downloads per episode. He's in 125 million homes.
Right.
And he's interviewing me about my book. And then the interview, like, I beat out like the guests before me and two after, who are like bigger than, but I still like killing them. And I'm like, that's amazing. I'm just me. I'm like, I wrote a book and I do this stuff, but all of a sudden you have an audience of hundreds of thousands of people. Like,
you see,
it's astonishing.
And that is the amazing part about it, Richard, because I've been podcasting now for 5-6 years or whatever it is. And then, I think there is about 5 million podcasters around the world. We are in the top 1% of that. And that is amazing. It's saying, why? Me? Really sitting here in Prince George, British Columbia, and talking to interesting persons like you virtually on a daily basis of all descriptions. We do it from all different topics. And but that is the future. And I believe he's still very much at the beginning of it.
Oh, I'm with you. Even at 4 or 5 million podcasts, it's in its infancy stage.
Exactly.
It has not been exploited, and I mean that in a good way, to all the potential like you're talking about. It's going to be, like you said, you can't even, it's hard to grasp.
Yeah.
where this what it's going to be able to do, but it's going to morph into incredible things because technology just makes it more and more accessible to more people, and our ability to do different things is really breathtaking. And where this is going to go.
Yeah. So in closing, give me some. So what lays in front of you going forward?
Wow, it's there's so much, but what I want to do, I'm like you, I'm out on the circuit, I'm speaking, I'm talking, I'm sharing, I'm teaching, I'm building coaches, I'm building an organization that can help these 10,000 business owners and beyond.
Yeah.
We have verticals that we take from there as well. So my focus on that is really bringing the ability for these people to free themselves from that trap of the business, from the owner prison. So
Right.
that's my drive. That's what I want to do because for me, John, the best thing I get is a wife of a business owner who contacts me and says, I never thought this was going to be possible. We just spent a week at the beach with our 5 kids. He was never on the phone to the office, just totally present. She said it's the most incredible thing ever. 8 years been waiting, for this. And it's like, you did it. I go, I didn't do it. Your husband did it, but I helped him.
Yeah.
But that's the reward. I want to see a lot of that.
Yeah.
I want to see more and more of that. I want to see families be able to reconnect and understand there's more to the world than just business, and they can balance themselves out. That's the real big mission.
So Richard Walsh, are you living the dream?
I'm living the real dream, John, for real. And I love it.
So for all those guests that are watching us from around the world and having interesting discussions like this about the books that Richard has as an ex-Marine, an author, a man that has gone through all the ups and downs in life, losing it all between 2008 and 2009. I remember it well because we were hanging on by fingernails as well. And then recovering from all of that, it's an inspiration for many. And as you are watching our podcast, the people from around the world, subscribe to our podcast, share it with others, like it, comment on it, contact Richard, give you us your website once more, Richard. We will put it on the finished version as well.
Awesome. Sharpenthespearcoaching.com.
Richard, it was a privilege to have you on my podcast. Let's make sure we stay in touch. And again, thank you for being part of my podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. The privilege was all mine, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.